Okay, well, I'm sitting on the floor. I got my bookcase behind me. Let's talk about some sci-fi.
Stay calm. It'll be okay.
You'd think that a popular book series like Murderbot, with a strong, charismatic main character that people relate to, would be an easy win for TV developers. But somehow, the TV show on Apple TV Plus manages to make this main character the heart and soul of the series incredibly unlikable. If you haven't read these books, meaning that you just clicked on this video to hate on a TV series, which honestly, respect. The Murderbot Diaries are a series of science fiction novels by Martha Wells, and they follow a sec unit, sort of like a robot bodyguard weapon type thing, who hacks its own governor module, develops free will, goes on adventures, but basically just wants to watch soap operas all day. And before we dive into my criticisms of the show, I think it's worth exploring what makes this series work, what makes this series so popular. The plot, I think my fellow Murderbot fans would agree, is largely incidental. Most of the books involve Murderbot going to, a planet or a system or a ship, fighting some bad guys, usually with some underlying strain of mystery. But what really drives the story is this sarcastic, funny narration from the main character, alongside this social awkwardness that makes this character really relatable for a broad swath of people who are neurodivergent or queer or just feel like they don't fit in mainstream society in some way. It's really all about this
rich interior life,
as Martha Wells herself puts it. And this is why people resonate with this character, this feeling of not quite belonging, but making your way anyway and finding what makes you happy. And part of the charm of the Murderbot series is that you're reading these books that are from the bot's perspective, and you see humanity's own quirks reflected back at you. As you're reading the series, you really get immersed in the bot's narration to the point where you're like, yeah, human beings are kind of stupid. We are kind of weird. Why are we like that? And so I was really excited for the TV show as a fan of the book series because I wanted to see how they were going to translate this
rich interior life
to the TV screen. And unfortunately, I found myself being a little bit disappointed. In the books, every scene is from the Murderbot's POV, meaning that every human action is interpreted through its lens, even if it's just watching the humans interact through a camera. And that's what creates this atmosphere, this persistent perspective that drives the series. But a lot of this show focuses on the human plots that are taking place. And the cast is great, everybody's doing an awesome job, but that's not really what the series is about. That's not what drives the series. There are moments when the Murderbot contextualizes these human interactions through its own lens.
They had been defacing the standard issue company habitat for aesthetic purposes.
I think about moments with Dr. Mensa, for example.
She was having another panic attack, but was too stubborn to turn around.
And those moments work really well because, again, you're seeing human behavior through the bot's perspective. But there are other moments where these scenes just play out with no input from the Murderbot whatsoever.
I'm sorry that I insisted Sec Unit not follow you on the mission. I also just wanted to say I'm really happy that you're back.
And as humans, we're more likely to relate to the other humans on screen, which means that even though the Murderbot is there, it's sort of building this perspective that we relate to the humans and not the robot. Let's look at one example, side by side, TV show versus book, and hopefully you'll see what I mean. There's this old screenwriting trope of save the cat, meaning that the protagonist should do something to endear themselves to the viewer early on, something like saving a cat, for example. Murderbot has this save the cat moment where, while on assignment, it saves the life of a human and then kind of talks to him while it's bringing him back to the base, basically just to keep him out of shock. Here's the moment from the book. It left me wondering what they were all marveling at, so I called up the recording of the incident. Okay, wow. I had talked to Valescu all the way up the side of the crater. I had been mostly concerned with the hopper's trajectory and Bharadwaj not bleeding out and what might come out of that crater for a second try. I hadn't been listening to myself, basically. I had asked him if he had kids. It was boggling. Maybe I had been watching too much media. He did have kids. He was in a 4-way marriage and had 7, all back home with his partners. There are several things happening in this moment. One, Murderbot is showing a form of empathy for human beings. In a critical moment, its response is to be kind, something that it says it learned from human media, but maybe it's coming from somewhere else. Either way, it kind of endears us to this bot. 2, it's also establishing Murderbot as an unreliable narrator when it comes to its own emotions about things. It says it doesn't care about humans' lives, doesn't pay attention to them, and yet it takes care to tell us that Valescu has kids, so clearly it was paying attention on some level, right? So when they had this moment in the show...
This is from Murata's feed.
Stay calm. It'll be okay. You have my word.
something felt off to me.
You have children. What are their names?
Have you ever seen a sec unit act like this?
No, but I don't know much about sec units.
In the show, the humans are watching this moment. Inherently, it is from their perspective. And through their perspective, it is weird that the robot is doing this.
That behavior is outside of its design parameters.
There's this sort of stilted social awkwardness that's inherent in the character, but somehow doesn't translate on screen because we're not seeing the Murderbot's rationale for doing these actions. And later, we do see that, like, okay, Murderbot is watching along. But we don't see inside its head in this moment. We don't see how much it's struggling to connect with human beings. By showing these scenes from the human perspective, it makes the Murderbot seem odd. We're laughing at it, not with it. Whereas the book series did the opposite. We're laughing along with the Murderbot as it sees these humans doing silly things. And this is what brings me to my core thesis. Murderbot should have been Fleabag. Okay. Bear with me here. I promise it makes sense. Fleabag, as played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge in the TV adaptation, is objectively a bit of a bad person. She steals things, she winds people up, she does anything to provoke a reaction out of those around her.
I'm wearing the top that she lost years ago, so...
But you, as the viewer, like her anyway, because you see why she does these things and the consequences for her and the constant cycle of guilt and grief that is going on in her head. What Fleabag does so brilliantly is it lets you in on the rich interior life of this character. We're not seeing Fleabag's actions through the lens of the people around her. We're seeing it through her lens, through persistent narration and breaking the fourth wall to talk directly to the audience.
Boo's death hit the papers. Local cafe girl gets hit by a bike and a car.
And that's what Murderbot struggles to do. I reread the first 3 of these books for my speculative fiction book club recently, and one of my friends said something interesting. So I've only read these books or listened to these books as audiobooks. But my friend said that she read the first one as a physical copy and then listened to the second one as an audiobook, and she found that the audiobook connected with her a lot more because by hearing Murderbot's voice in your ear, it connected a lot better with this character, with the narration that's going on. Which is why it's frustrating that somehow this TV show doesn't lean into the narration a lot more than it does. I wish that the showrunners had been willing to lean into this Fleabag-style narration a little bit more, having the Murderbot talk directly to the camera, having the Murderbot talk about its feelings instead of just exposition dumping for paragraph after paragraph.
We're a bunch of hippie scientists from some tiny, non-aligned planet. Rim expeditions were dangerous. Turns out they were from Preservation Alliance.
When, in reality, the exposition is not that important to the series as a whole, sorry to say. I read an interview with the showrunners in Polygon recently, and they said something that stuck out to me and made a lot of sense as to why the TV show is the way that it is. They said that they didn't specifically think about the tone of the show, that the tone would be sort of an emergent property of all the other elements that they put into it. I see where they're coming from, but I just don't think that that's good enough. I think in a TV show that's driven by world building and plot and exposition, that would make sense. The tone comes from all the other properties that go into it. But for a series like Murderbot, the series is driven by the tone. It's driven by the narration of the main character, and the world building and exposition are completely secondary to that. People don't come to Murderbot for the science fiction world. Well, okay, maybe some people do. But a lot of people are coming to the series for Murderbot itself. So you have to focus on the tone. That's kind of the whole thing. Not to make a total pivot, but this is also my struggle with the Percy Jackson TV series, is that they did not adequately translate the tone of the narration by Percy into the TV series, and they just did a lot of exposition dumping, but that's for a different video essay. But let's give some laurels alongside our darts, to quote the Columbia Journalism Review. I think the show is objectively well made. It's clear that a lot of time and money and care went into it, and that's probably why it's so well reviewed by a lot of reviewers. This is one of those shows that I think has the Wheel of Time effect, as I like to call it, where people who have not read the books view the TV show and they think that, hey, this is a great show. It's objectively pretty well made. whereas people who have read the book say everything is wrong, they changed so many things, and I think I'm somewhere between those two perspectives. I would also like to say that Sanctuary Moon, the TV show that Murderbot is obsessed with, is so good on screen. It really leans into these like campy aesthetics that remind me of Star Trek and also Doctor Who, the show that I was obsessed with as a teenager, so it really connected with me specifically. It is a well-made series, and yet I still want more from it. I wanted to tap into the charisma of this character, its insecurities, its social awkwardness with human beings, and the humor that kind of overrides the seemingly serious sci-fi premise. There are still more episodes to be aired this season, and I will be watching all of them. As much as I love to complain, I really am optimistic, so I do hope that it gets better over the course of the series. Peace out. I can't end the video like that. What the hell?